Yes, it's campaign season for certain in the state of Florida. Presidential candidates vie for attention on one side of the aisle, while the other side keeps trying to explain why they don't debate when more people would watch. Plus, trying to move up the political ranks, you're going to hear from a Republican and a Democrat, both hoping you'll call them senator by this time next year.
Well, I'm a Florida Republican, and I'm the only person in the race who is not part of the Washington, D.C. machine. Every other candidate in the race, their only perspective is being a member of Congress.
Seniors deserve a raise, and Floridians deserve a raise. People who work also deserve a raise. I'm in favor of a higher minimum wage. I'm in favor of health care coverage for everyone who works.
Alan Grayson and Carlos Lopez-Quintero for your consideration ahead of the primaries on This Week in Jacksonville. And thanks for joining us. We start this morning with presidential campaigns and look ahead to tonight's Democratic primary debate. As I say thank you for joining us, I also say thank you to these gentlemen. We welcome Rick Mullaney, the director of the JU Public Policy Institute. Also with us, former Congressman Jason Altmaier, member of the House of Representatives from 2007 to 2013. So let's start here. Tonight, a Sunday night, is when Democrats are debating. Jason, why don't you help me understand? There's a lot of conversation. Why are the Democratic candidates doing this when more people aren't watching?
Well, there is a lot of conversation. I think it's justified. Secretary Clinton is the overwhelming favorite, or at least perceived to be that. And the Democratic Party controls the timing of the debates. And I think Senator Sanders and Governor O'Malley have made the case that they feel like they're giving her preferred treatment by these time slots where very few people are watching.
What do you think about that, Rick?
I think that's exactly right. You should contrast the Republicans and the Democrats. You have 10 Republican debates. You have 6 Democratic debates. 3 of the 6 Democratic debates are on the weekends. And the difference in audience, when they did the first Democratic debate on Tuesday night, 15 million people. The ones on the weekend, 7 and 8 million people. This time, it's a 3-day weekend, a Sunday night with NFL football on the other channel. You'll probably be south of 7 million people. So who's going to be watching?
Yeah,
probably by design.
One of the things we wanted to talk about is how important this might be. It's the first debate in 2016 for Democrats. It's also, we're getting close to that February 1st and when people start voting who they want to be their candidate for their parties.
Ken, if you'd asked me 2 weeks ago, I would have told you it didn't matter at all, that it was all a done deal and Hillary Clinton was running away with it. And while she's still going to be the Democratic nominee, her lead nationally, according to the Real Clear Politics polls, has shrunk from 20% to 7%. And over the last 2 weeks alone, you've seen double-digit gains by Bernie Sanders in Iowa and in New Hampshire. It is very possible for Bernie Sanders to win Iowa and New Hampshire, although I don't think that changes the ultimate outcome. But it really changes the race, and this is the last debate before Iowa and New Hampshire. So it is a very important debate.
Jason, why do you see some of that change there? Why is Bernie Sanders coming on so strong right now? Is it about Bernie Sanders or is it about Hillary Clinton?
I think there's a lot of fatigue for the Clintons. And President Clinton is back on the campaign trail. He's going to try to revitalize that brand. But I think what you're seeing is Senator Sanders has tapped into the left base of the Democratic Party, and that's for real. But I think a lot of Secretary Clinton's troubles in breaking free has been, I think people are just tired and looking for a change.
It's interesting. I talked to somebody recently who said, gosh, it used to be that Republicans were all about whoever's next. It's their turn. He said, gosh, it seems like Democrats are doing that this time. Are Democrats saying it's Hillary's turn? And is that why we're seeing some of these things where the debates are when they are and there are so few candidates and that sort of thing?
I think clearly that's what happened. She's the front runner. She was obviously the second place finisher last time. She's the most well qualified of probably anybody in the Democratic Party. It's just a matter of going out on the campaign trail and making the case that you're about the future when you're being defined by what you've done in your past.
One of the things, Rick, you just mentioned was that Iowa and New Hampshire are available for Bernie Sanders. Can he win after that?
Very difficult. You're going to go to South Carolina where she has a big lead. But remember, she had a lead in South Carolina back in 2008 when Barack Obama won Iowa. And his win in Iowa changed things dramatically. And then you go on to Nevada, which completes the February primaries. But then you go to the South, starting on March 1st. And in the southern states, it's hard for me to imagine Bernie Sanders winning in the South. So Iowa and New Hampshire could turn this race upside down, cause a lot of conversation. I don't see it changing the vote in the South. I don't see it changing the ultimate outcome. But let me tell you what I've learned this season. Nothing is certain.
All right, so 30 seconds each. What did you learn that you didn't know by seeing the Republicans debate this last week?
Donald Trump's actually getting better as a debater. I thought he had one of his better nights. And Ted Cruz has the reputation, rightfully so, outstanding debater. But I thought, particularly on the New York values question, that Donald Trump got the better of it. Marco Rubio, I think, is the best speaker. Three-way race primarily with Cruz, Trump, and Rubio.
Yeah. Jason, what about you?
Nobody would have said 6 months ago that Donald Trump had a path to the nomination. It looks like now it's his to lose. I think that it's going to come down to those southern states that Rick talks about, March 1st, the SEC primary, Texas and Oklahoma and all the southern states. It's hard to envision a scenario other than Cruz versus Trump for the nomination.
Yeah. Still some time to go, but as you pointed out, nothing's certain right now. It's very entertaining for those of us watching. So appreciate your analysis and your insights this morning. Thank you both. Well, some of those candidates for president have served or continue to serve as senator. One of the Republican candidates to replace Marco Rubio is Florida's lieutenant governor. Our interview with CLC next on This Week in Jacksonville.
Try our tropical chicken spinach wrap combo for only $4.99. Flame grilled chicken, fresh leafy spinach, melted cheese, and delicious bacon crumbles. Get a combo only $4.99, including a regular drink and choice of side. Pollo Tropical, life's better under the palm.
A growing number of our clients, unfortunately, are victims of someone who was texting and driving. And in the event that you're involved in a crash, we can help you through that process.
Harrell and Harrell, don't settle for less than you deserve.
After I woke up from my accident, I found I lost my 4 front teeth. The Highbridge implant team put my mouth back together again. They took the time to explain all the options. They could do one tooth or the entire mouth, whatever's needed. The technology behind Highbridge implants is amazing. But I think what most people notice is the artistry. That's what makes them special. I am so glad I chose Highbridge. It really is the simple way to a lasting smile.
This is Pastor R.J. Washington of the Titus Harvest Dome. Join us on Channel 4 every Sunday morning at 9:30 a.m. We're going to have a God time. Yes.
Try our tropical chicken spinach wrap combo for only $4.99. Flame grilled chicken, fresh leafy spinach, melted cheese, and delicious bacon crumbles. Get a combo only $4.99, including a regular drink and choice of side. Pollo Tropical, life's better under the palm.
Quick question. What do all these parking meters have in common?
Broken.
Over 100 meters busted. And taxpayers are losing $8 grand a month. Even worse, local businesses are suffering.
The lost revenue is tremendous.
News 4 Jax investigator Jennifer Waugh uncovers the bizarre problem plaguing some of the machines.
This one's broken too.
And why the city doesn't know how big the problem really is. Tuesday on the 10 o'clock news. You're watching This Week in Jacksonville with Kent Justice.
As you know, Marco Rubio from Florida is running for president. That means his U.S. Senate seat is up for grabs here in 2016. You've already heard on this program from one of the Republican candidates, David Jolly. Today, I want you to hear from a recent interview we did with Lieutenant Governor Carlos Lopez Quintero.
It's geared specifically to chamber audiences. It's statewide. It's the same message about what we've been accomplishing here in Florida by cutting taxes, lowering regulations, and in creating an environment where businesses can succeed and Floridians can succeed, small businesses can succeed. So I never tailor. Our administration, Governor Scott and myself, we don't tailor our message to different groups. We tell them all the same thing because we want the same thing for everybody. We want everybody to live their version of the American dream in Florida.
I just heard somebody asking about a specific part of Florida, here in Jacksonville, asking about the port. And as you put it, not quite ready. Where do things stand in your mind on Jacksonville's port being able to expand and be ready for bigger business?
Well, we're bullish on Jacksonville's port and all of our 15 deepwater ports, frankly, in Florida. My last briefing that I got was that they're at the tail end of getting their federal Army Corps permit in order to be able to begin construction. They have a calendared program through 2023 with a specific budget of north of $700 million. So what I told this audience, and I tell anybody that asks in relation to Jackson's port, we need to engage with our federal partners and ensure that the federal government gives infrastructure dollars to Jacksonville's port, because it's an important project. It'll make a big deal for Jacksonville and Florida in general and create opportunities not just for the next election, but for the next generation. These are logistics jobs that are going to be here for generations. This is wonderful, and it's very exciting.
One of the not exciting but big topics has been about terrorist activities. And one of the things that came out of the governor's office was, hey, we want to make sure Syrian refugees, other things happening, that the state has a voice. Is the state going to get that voice, or is it going to be federally pushed through that will be maybe in more danger because of these things?
Unfortunately, the final decision falls on the federal government, the Obama administration, and to an extent on Congress. We've asked Congress to put a stop on the funding that would allow for the relocation of the Syrian refugees here to Florida, because we have no level of confidence that a sufficient vetting is taking place to ensure that Floridians are safe and secure, because that's our primary responsibility. And with the horrible tragedy that you saw in California, now we know, after the investigations have been taking place, that the wife who participated in the terrorist act went through the immigration process and was supposedly vetted through this federal vetting process. So it's now evidence that there has been a failure. And what we were talking about when right after the Paris attack was we need 100% certainty that not one can get through. Because if one gets through, that could create a safety hazard for our citizens. And that's why it was common sense request then, and it's still a common sense request now.
You're also running for U.S. Senate, so let me ask you a question or two about that. What makes what you want to do as a representative of the United States Senate from Florida different from what some of the other folks who are running would want to do?
Well, I'm a Florida Republican, and I'm the only person in the race who is not part of the Washington, D.C. machine. Every other candidate in the race, their only perspective is being a member of Congress. It's the only perspective I don't have. And it's the only perspective I believe the next senator from Florida should not have. Now, my perspective has been here in Florida, adding 1 million jobs, cutting taxes 50 times, asking for the legislature to cut $1.2 billion in taxes next year, to diversify our economy and help our small businesses by growing the manufacturing sector in our state. I've been here on the ground in Florida delivering results. That is the measure of any representative, is what results have you delivered. Unfortunately, in Washington, D.C., they are very good at telling voters what they want to hear, but they never stop a bad idea from happening, and they never get a good one signed into law. And as a citizen, I'm frustrated seeing the inaction and the growing federal debt. It's almost $19 trillion, Ken. This is something that my children's children are going to have to pay off. And we are going to run out of money. It is going to happen before my youngest daughter graduates from high school. So if you care about national security like I do, if you care about jobs and the economy like I do, you need to care about the spending in the federal government, because once we reach that critical point where we do not have enough money to pay our bills, and it is coming, it will affect every issue of importance, and it will dramatically affect the future of the United States of America. That's what's driving me to run for the United States Senate, to be somebody who's focused on solutions and not part of the problem.
Lopez Quintero has been on the Million Miles for a Million Jobs bus tour with Governor Scott recently. He says Florida has created an environment where private sector jobs grow because companies want to move here and stay, while in Washington, they talk about creating government jobs at taxpayer expense. Well, one of the opponents, in a sense, Congressman Alan Grayson from Orlando, joins us next on This Week in Jacksonville as he runs for the Senate, too.
Dad's telling the whole world about the great deal he got on high-speed internet from AT&T.
Hey, everybody. My sister took my advice and signed up for AT&T.
George. Hey, Tiffany.
Hey, what's up, girl? Check yourself, Rodney.
Right now, he's probably talking about how reliable our connection is.
My connection is super reliable, so I know I can depend on it working.
Sounds good. Do I know you?
See.
Get a deal worth talking about. Get high-speed internet from AT&T. Just $15 a month for 12 months with other qualifying service.
Prices are down, down, down.
Helping cut the cost of living. And they're staying down.
Prices are down and staying down on the things you buy most at Winn-Dixie. Like Winn-Dixie sandwich bread, now down and staying down at $1 a loaf. And Sanderson Farms boneless, skinless chicken breasts, now down and staying down at $2.50 a pound.
All these down prices. Crazy.
Prices are down and staying down at Winn-Dixie.
This is Pastor R.J. Washington of the Titus Harvest Dome. Join us on Channel 4 every Sunday morning at 9:30 a.m. We're going to have a God time. Yes.
Don't you just love pleasant surprises? Like finding a $20 bill in the dryer? Or Or finding out that with direct auto and life insurance, you can get a low rate and a super low down payment for as little as $45 down, regardless of your driving history. Why wait? Get covered now for as little as $45 down. Call, click, or come in today and be pleasantly surprised with a super low down payment from Direct Auto.
You just heard from a Republican candidate. Democrats want the Senate seat available in November, too. U.S. Representative Alan Grayson is running for the office while serving in Congress. I spoke recently with Grayson on his reaction to President Obama's executive actions on gun control. Well, so before we talk about U.S. Senate race, yes, let's talk about some current events and maybe even start with the recent conversation nationally, kind of started by President Obama after mass shootings for gun control. Where do you stand on that? Do you support what the president is saying about maybe revising what happens with gun laws across the country?
I absolutely support the president and what he did. What he did was to end the loophole for gun shows and for buying guns over the internet. It doesn't make sense to have laws if you're going to have loopholes that negate the laws. And what the president did is a matter of common sense. He said that if you can't walk into a Walmart if you're a convicted felon and buy a gun, why should you be able to do that anywhere else? And the same logic applies if you're on the lam, so to speak. You're not allowed to buy a gun. If you're a drug addict, you're not allowed to buy a gun. There's several categories of people who are just not allowed to buy guns, and there's no reason to say, well, if it's at a gun show, that's okay. That means you're not serious about the law in the first place. What the president did is fundamentally a matter of common sense, and he's supported by 90% of the American people. The polls show that 90% of all Democrats are in favor of this, 90% of all Republicans are in favor of this, 90% of all NRA members are in favor of what the president's done. So it's really a question of, are we a democracy or not?
One of the issues I know that is important to you is a bill you filed called Seniors Deserve a Raise Act. And as you were pointing out, seniors most recently getting that Social Security check without a raise. What do you want to see happen there?
What I want to see happen is very simple. Seniors deserve a champion in Congress, and I've been that champion in the House of Representatives. I've helped seniors in innumerable ways in the House of Representatives. I want to do the same thing in the Senate, and specifically I want to do three things. These are three very important things that I'm already working on. The first is to solve the problem with the cost of living adjustment. According to the Congressional Research Service, seniors should have gotten a 2.9% increase in their Social Security this year. They got zilch, zero, nothing. And that's wrong. Seniors haven't gotten a raise in their benefits in 40 years. The second thing I want to do is to extend Medicare to cover your eyes, your ears, and your teeth. We have a bill called the Seniors Have Eyes, Ears, and Teeth Act to do exactly that, and I've gotten over 70 co-sponsors for that bill already. Third thing is I want to eliminate the double taxation of Social Security benefits. It doesn't make any sense at all. You get taxed twice when you pay into the system and then when the system pays out to you.
Tell me why people should consider you when they look at the U.S. Senate seat.
Because seniors deserve a raise and Floridians deserve a raise. People who work also deserve a raise. I'm in favor of a higher minimum wage. I'm in favor of health care coverage for everyone who works. And I've fought for it, not just in favor of it, but I've fought for it. I've passed more amendments than any other member of the House of Representatives in the past 3 years. More Grayson bills are now the law of the land than any other member of the House of Representatives since I was reelected to Congress. According to Slate magazine, I'm the most effective member of Congress.
Whether it's Senate or House, there's been some conversation on the state side that, hey, there's this federal issue about refugees coming in, and Governor Scott made that an issue. I understand as we go into legislative session that some of the members of the House or Senate in Tallahassee are going to say, hey, let's put in place some laws that say we're not going to allow Syrian refugees or other refugees to come in because the feds say it's okay. We're going to have some state control. What do you think about that in particular?
Well, let's face it, Florida can't have its own foreign policy, neither can any other state. That's a matter of the U.S. Constitution. That's a federal government function. We argue sometimes about whether specific things are federal government functions or not. For instance, drug policy. You could make a good argument about that. But clearly we have to have one policy as an entire country for refugees, and I think it should be a fair one. These people are facing tragedy. My own grandparents fled from Eastern Europe because they were not safe. And they were able to come in 2 cases to Canada and in 2 other cases to the United States and get refuge here. Look, we're not talking about a lot of people. We're talking about a handful of people. And no refugee has ever, ever, ever committed terrorism after coming to the United States. People forget this, but all the 9/11 attackers were here on student visas or visitors visas. They were not refugees.
Saw a report in The Hill that some of your staffers had departed the campaign, and that you were meeting with an ethics investigator regarding, and what this put was claims over hedge funds. So I want to give you an opportunity just to address that. What does that mean and where does that stand?
Okay, listen, we have an 18-month-long campaign. Obviously, during the course of 18 months, people are going to make personnel changes. I venture to say that here at this station, you've had some changes in the past 18 months, probably so. So that doesn't mean anything. It is true that I've been smeared by the supporters of my primary opponent, Patrick Murphy, and we're working that out. But that's politics. That's how he chooses to play this game, by smearing my name. It doesn't matter. The voters understand that I'm a champion for seniors. I'm a champion for minorities. I'm a champion for people who work for a living.
Representative Grayson told me he believes America needs to revive the assault weapons ban that we had for many years. He said, if we banned assault weapons, it's reasonable to suspect that we'd see fewer of these mass murders. Additionally, I have invited both Democrat Patrick Murphy and Republican Ron DeSantis, candidates for U.S. Senate, to join us for an interview soon. All right, coming up, a great way to celebrate a national holiday and how you can participate. That's next on This Week in Jacksonville.
Prices are down, down, down.
Prices are down and staying down on the things you buy most at Winn-Dixie, like Sanderson Farms boneless, skinless chicken breasts, now down and staying down at $2.50 a pound. Prices are down and staying down at Winn-Dixie.
Furniture Mart is having a Stickley truckload sale with incredible prices on bedrooms, dining rooms, living rooms, and more. If you love Stickley furniture, this is the sale for you. Shop early for best selection. Save up to 45%. Furniture Mart, endless possibilities.
Start the new year in a new Nissan. During Nissan's 2016 event, choose from 7 models with 0% financing for up to 60 months, plus up to $5,000 cash back. Or lease Altima just $189 per month. But hurry, the excitement may last, but 0% on 7 models won't. Offers end February 1st. Shop your local Nissan store and choose Nissan.com. Innovation that excites.
I'm John Morgan of Morgan & Morgan. I've been asked thousands of times why I chose the phrase, "for the people," for my firm slogan. It's not only our branding statement, but our mission statement as well. For many years, almost 30 now, you've trusted us to try and get you justice for you and your family at a most difficult time. An accident can suddenly change our lives forever. And if it does, we're here for you. Morgan & Morgan, for the people.
Prices are down, down, down.
Prices are down and staying down on the things you buy most at Winn-Dixie, like Winn-Dixie sandwich bread, now down and staying down at $1 a loaf. Prices are down and staying down at Winn-Dixie.
Monday on River City Live, we're chatting with legendary actor William Shatner about a concert that will come to Jacksonville that's near and dear to his heart.
Plus, the one tool you should have at home if you want to get organized in 2016.
Monday at 11 on 4.
You're watching This Week in Jacksonville on Channel 4.
We are very proud to be part of a Positively Jax event that is coming up. Tomorrow's Martin Luther King Day. News for Jax is joining with Wells Fargo, United Way, and Hands on Jacksonville for an MLK Day of Service. We invite you to join us for this special event. There are all kinds of volunteer projects that you can sign up for. They involve rolling up your sleeves and sprucing up neighborhoods in need. We've got some information on how you can sign up on news4jax.com. So go to our Positively Jax page, look under the Community tab. And joining us for this final segment, United Way of Northeast Florida CEO and President Michelle Braun. Thank you. Thank you for being here. Thank you for being part of what's going to be, I think, a great day. Tell me and all of us exactly what is this MLK Day of Service.
Well, thank you. Thanks the whole team for being such a great part of this. We're really excited. So United Way's role is to mobilize people and resources to make lasting change. So in honor of Martin Luther King, this is a perfect way for us to do that with our partners, Hands on Jax, with LISC, with Wells Fargo. So we'll have more than 600 volunteers out tomorrow doing about 30 different projects.
All right, so I just gave some information to folks if they want to sign up. So we've got 600. What if we had 1,200.
Welcome. 1,200 would be fantastic.
Really?
There might be a
That'd be all
line,
right.
but you certainly can come out tomorrow morning, 7:30 at Edward Waters College.
So what are some of those specific projects, I guess, that people could participate in?
We have a range of things, so different stuff. We have some things that involve walking around, passing out free tax prep information, one of the things we do to help people become financially stable. We have painting projects. We'll be at a couple different schools doing some really neat things. We're going to change a bank of lockers into books as one example. We're going to build a Born Learning Trail, which is an early learning trail that has manipulatives for kids and parents to learn how to properly interact with their young children, but also has literacy pieces to it. So a wide range of things. Habit is doing an entire block renovation of houses and landscaping, and so there's various things you can do.
So one of the things I'm hearing, you mentioned a bunch of different nonprofits in our organization. This is a bunch of them coming together?
Yes, we collaborate. In fact, we just moved to the Jesse Ball DuPont Center, which is, I think we have 14 nonprofits now in one place, but this is another example. United Way is a great partner with so many other great partners, and it's just, this is a fantastic way that we all are coming together.
All right, so what about Wells Fargo's involvement with United Way? What is that? They're not a nonprofit, but obviously getting in and getting involved.
They're very supportive. In fact, we couldn't do this without them. So financially, they're helping support the work that goes behind all this, all these projects. They're also bringing out 400, 500, we'll see, 600 of their own volunteers. So Wells Fargo employees are taking their day off and putting it back to a day of service. So they've been a fantastic partner.
You said so on the financial side. So that's the money that goes for the painting or the handouts or all that sort of thing.
The tools, the paint, and paying for the projects to make them happen.
All right. United Way focusing on education, income, and health. Do most of your projects there, when you work with Wells Fargo, support, I guess, that income component by increasing financial stability of families like you just mentioned?
We have a lot of different great partners. Well, Wells Fargo is a financial capability network partner. So nationally, Wells in a couple different cities, about 8 different cities, along with Jacksonville, were competitively selected to create a financial stability network. So we're working with Wells and other partners to make sure that people know how to plan their finances. So we do coaching classes, we prepare taxes for free, and that is financed by Wells Fargo. There's the Wells Fargo Historic Community Learning Center in Springfield, and you folks can come any day of the week and get hands-on services right there.
Well, the good thing about managing your finances better or having more finances to better manage, you can spend that on other people and you can invest like this. So Michelle Braun, I appreciate it so much. Good luck tomorrow.
Thank you.
I'm going to participate. A lot of us from Channel 4 will be doing that as well. So
we appreciate
thanks for
it.
coordinating it. All right, so This Week in Jacksonville airs each Sunday morning at this time, and we're working to update you on the early adventures of the legislative session in Tallahassee. Also scheduling with Ambassador Nancy Soderberg, distinguished visiting scholar at the University of North Florida and director of UNF's Public Service Leadership Program. Thanks for watching today.
At News 4 Jax, we're always covering the news, even when we're not on TV. Stay informed, on the go, and online at news4jax.com.